How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Fearless Gear Reviews, my patron-sponsored show where I can give you guys an honest look at a piece of gear and give you the truth without any kind of corporate fuckery whatsoever. So let's cut the crap and get right to it. So what we got right here is a Midas 522-500 series compressor. Now I wanted to check this out because it is priced stupidly low. It's only going for $250. There's a big question mark here because it originally went for $800. I'm going to take a wild guess here, and I could be completely wrong, but I think the reason these were $800 originally was because Midas was a small company. Behringer comes along, buys them out, and then ramps up production, and they can do them a lot cheaper, which should be a total win for the home studio recording musician. Now, I am definitely not from the school of thought that says, well, if it's Behringer, it must be shit. If you watch that video we did a couple weeks back where I shot out 6 different interfaces, the Behringer actually fared very well against the competition. So if I'm manufacturing gear for other companies, I would definitely keep my eyes open for Behringer because they have really stepped up their game as far as interfaces are concerned anyway. When it comes to analog compression, that remains to be seen. So let's take a look, shall we? Been dying on boxes for the last couple days. I'd like to thank my friend Jeff Allen there at Sweetwater. He's an awesome dude and just a really good bunch at Sweetwater. And here's some candy that I can't eat because it's definitely not keto compatible. Thanks for trying to get me fat, Jeff! And here's the box it comes in. Surprisingly pretty heavy. Wow, maybe it's got some transformers in there. Maybe not, we shall see. Designed and engineered in the UK, made in China. Now I'm just completely speculating here. I could be totally wrong and talking out of my ass. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong. You guys have a really good habit of doing that. But because it says designed and engineered in the UK, I'm gonna guess that Midas was originally a British corporation and then Behringer moved all the production over to China. It comes in a fucking wooden box. Holy shit. I gotta say, that's impressive, but wooden boxes don't help the sound get across the speakers or sound good or sound bad or anything like that. So it's fluff. It's nice fluff, but it's still fucking fluff. Let's see what we get here. And a nicely wrapped compressor. And here we go. Now that box was definitely a lot of weight in the package. This feels a little bit more reasonable. It probably weighs a little bit less than one of my API 512Cs or my IGS Alter 500, which has got a big honking transformer on it. The knobs have some decent resistance to them. They're not stepped, but they do have a little bit of resistance, so it's good. You're not going to accidentally knock this out of alignment or whack or whatever settings you had it set to. You actually have to grab it and move it to get it to physically move. Switches feel okay. They feel a little light. Okay, might feel like they might get bumped or something like that. Not bad. Let's drop it in the rack and see what happens. So before we put it in the rack, I figured it'd be a good idea to pull the side off this thing and take a look and see what's really going on. And it seems to have a transformer on the output section, although it looks to be pretty fucking tiny. Now, a lot of guys, not me of course, will tell you that size isn't everything, and I suppose we should be listening with our ears and not our eyes, so let's give it a shot and see what we get. All right, we moved over to the desktop here, and I'm doing a 2-camera setup plus a screen grab, so hopefully all this goes correctly. What I got going on right now is I've got a mix I had up there a couple days ago from my good friend Eric Arco. He was demonstrating for the Audio Assault Sigma. We were really happy with that. I love the mix I got on that. And I've just been experimenting using the Midas on various instrumental sources. And so far, I'm pretty impressed with what it's been being used on. Now, to get in and out of Reaper, I'm using the ARIA insert plugin here, and that sends it from hardware back and forth, so it'll go to the compressor and then back into Reaper all in real time. It works just like a plugin. Here it is on bass guitar. We punch that out. And you can see we're hitting the compressor pretty hard here. Definitely pull that back a little bit. Definitely add some grit. Now, I'm going to say this, as far as compressors go, this thing really slams down pretty hard. Of course, you can get pretty gentle settings with it as well, but I just love the overall functionality of this thing. There's an auto release, there's a high pass filter, and then there's a hard and soft knee compression switch. The soft knee I would want to use on vocals, the hard knee stuff I'd want to use more on instruments you'd find in a metal mix like bass guitar, kick, and snare. However, after playing with this for the last couple of days, I think my favorite application for this thing is bass guitar, followed up by snare. This isn't my particular favorite on vocals, and I'm going to show you guys what that's all about in a minute here. But yeah, let's just take it through on bass guitar. I'll show you exactly what's going on. We've got a really high ratio going on, maybe 10 to 1. Like, we're just limiting this thing. And if we use this to just turn the signal right down, just flatten it out completely. Mind you, we've got a pretty flat signal to begin with. It looks a little bit squared off to begin with. But this is just finishing it off completely, and it's kind of awesome. Try to bypass that. Of course, that's going to let a bit more volume out. And we've got this on loop. Pull that threshold back a bit. We hit the attack and release. Slow that down a bit. Medium attack and release is fine. We'll pull the threshold back a bit. There we go. We're getting a little more aggressive. We got to pull the output back a bit. You can hear it hitting that output transformer just a little bit harder. Well, fortunately, we've got a red indicator here. It's really important that we balance the level on the output control with the return volume as well, so we're not digitally scoring the wave off. Fortunately, this thing seems to get the signal under control pretty quick. If we're going to punch that out, yeah, it's adding quite a bit there. And if we can hit that compressor a little bit harder, balance it out with the output. But this gets interesting when we start throwing the presence control in as well. What that does is it bypasses the aggressiveness of the compression curve in the higher frequencies, giving you more of an edge, and it stomps down on the lower frequencies a little bit more. Obviously, this is something I'd want to use very sparingly, especially when you get around on vocals, but for bass guitar, it's definitely interesting for bringing out some aggressiveness. And when we hit the high pass filter, it's going to bring out the bottom end even that much more. So there's less compression going on. So it seems to be letting more top end through with the presence control, but the high pass filter lets more bottom end through. I don't know what's going on if this is adding some kind of a mid-range scoop to the tone, but it's freaking cool on bass guitar. Let's hear it in the mix. So we got to bring that down a bit now. Yeah, that really gives some presence to the bass. Gotta be real careful with that presence knob because it can get a little bit quacky. Now, the big question is what happens if we start hitting that output transformer a little bit harder? How cruddy is that going to make the sound? I'm going to bring the fader down. Fortunately, it seems to be limiting here on the return, so we're not going to get a squared off waveform coming in digitally anyway. So it's almost like a distortion generator at this point. This is kind of neat. Okay, we are peaking out on the meter a little bit there, digitally. That's pretty neat, actually. Let a bit of that, more of that opening transient through. Speed up the release. A bit more threshold. Just shave that off a little bit. And bring the output down just a bit. Punch it out. That's a whole lot of fun right there. I don't know if I'd go that crazy with the output settings on a bass guitar, but I just kind of illustrate the point that yes, you can get a little bit of character out of this thing if you drive the output a little bit harder. Of course, I'm probably sure there's a bunch of you guys who are freaking out right now. What are you doing, you idiot? But the great thing about hardware compression is that you can abuse it and you can do things you might not be the most stellar setting, but get something cool out of it regardless. No, it's not the equivalent of cupping the mic. This just sounds like shit no matter which way you slice it. But hitting an output a little bit harder than it was designed for can be a lot of fun. Okay, next up, we're going to try it on snare drum, and that's the wonderful thing about Reaper's routing is can just set it up to go in and out. And we're on that amazing Cranbourne 500 ADAT system, so everything's hooked up via ADAT. There's no patching involved. I'm just doing it strictly in software right here. All I'm doing is going out via my different ADAT connections, and it works absolutely amazing. Again, I'm using hardware as a plugin here. Anyway, let's check out what we got on snare here. I was really happy with how the snare turned out. Let's see if we can dial something in and get it with a really nice crack. Okay, so what I've got here are 2 snare tracks going to a bus, and we've got our snare top and our snare bottom. Now, I'm using the AIX multiband gate and the drum EQ to tune both these tracks. I'm using the multiband gate to get all the bleed under control, obviously, and the drum EQ I'm using to tune the frequencies of the drum to their resonances, and it's all laid out, and I've got several videos on these plugins. They are absolutely worth their weight in gold for modern metal production with live drums. I can't recommend them enough. So this is the raw sound we've got by blending these 2 mics. Top mic, that's 57. We take the gate and EQ off. That's what we got. Gate out a little bit, get that noise out, throw in the bottom snare mic. I'm in love with the sound of that bottom snare mic. Jackson Ward, who recorded this, told me that is an AKG 214, I believe. It's the first time I've really worked with a large diaphragm on the bottom snare, and I got to say, I think I'm in love with the sound. I'm thinking I've finally figured out how they got that massive snare sound on the Black Album finally. It was a combination of a number of things, but I think that bottom snare mic is where it's at. This just gives that wonderful piffiness to it. Now this is all going to the Midas. Let's dial in a snare sound here and see what we get. I like that already. Let's speed up the attack. Well, one of the easiest ways to dial in a snare sound is to just hit the snare with extreme compression settings and then start to back them off. So we're going to crank on the threshold, speed up the attack, speed up the release. So we're going to hit this thing at maximum threshold, maximum ratio, fastest attack and release, and we're just going to dial it in until we start letting the transient in and tune the snare around that. Okay, sounded pretty hideous. Let's back off the ratio a bit. And finally the threshold. Cool. If we put in the high pass filter, no real effect. We'll go soft knee here just for a comparison. Like the hard knee, let's go auto release, see what happens. Not that big of a difference. But over the raw sound, so that's just the 2 mics untouched. That adds a lot of thwack. Let's see if we get the level up a little bit. Pull the threshold back a bit, so we're not killing the drum. But I love that crack. Now with that release knob, it seems like we can just dial in that bottom mic a little bit more. It'll get a little bit more of that rattle and a little bit more of that sustain. That's pretty aggressive. Let's throw the verb on it. And let's hear it in the mix. And that seems the threshold's really sensitive right around there. Maybe I want to take the ratio back just a touch. Let's try one more time. Not bad. And if we try the presence. Maybe just a tiny bit of that knob. All right, it's not bad on snare. I don't think it's going to be my first choice. I've got a couple other really nice compressors from IGS that would probably be my first choice, but I am really digging this on bass guitar. Let's try it out on kick drum as well, see what happens. Okay, that's just getting farty there. I'm going to try putting this in front of the EQ, see what happens. I like it with the high pass in. That's not bad right there. Let's just play with the attack and release a bit. A little more compression. Presence knob isn't doing too much because I've got this in the chain before the EQ, so it's not affecting it that much, but I'm very curious to hear exactly what's going on if we punch this out. Definitely brings out that attack that much more. Now in this part of the video, I've only got the 522 on the kick drum, not the snare, not the bass guitar anymore. Those are back to software. Wow, you can really dial that bite in. Try auto release, see what happens. I like what it's doing here with the triplets on the kicks. When I did the original mix digitally, I played it back for Jackson. He said, oh, you couldn't hear my kick triplets. This, I don't think we're having any trouble whatsoever hitting those. Not bad at all. I got to say, that's kind of impressive. It's maybe a little bit too clicky for my taste. I don't know if it would be my first choice to put on a client's record or whatnot, but it definitely seems up to the task nonetheless. Now, my big concern here right now is the heat coming off of this thing. It's really warm. Now, I've had this thing on for most of the day and I'm very concerned about a heat failure. I'm just not sure if this thing is going to last. So please keep that in mind. It is hot as hell. The metal is very hot to the touch. So buyer beware as far as that's concerned. All right, so I've switched over to headphones for the vocal test. I'm using the new Hi X55s from Austrian Audio, their new company that I'm working with. And so far, wow, these are really killer. Speaking of really killer, I'm going through the Camden mic preamp from my friends over at Cranborn Audio. And let me tell you, this thing's just spectacular. Like, watch what happens when I dial in this mojo knob. This is the thing I was really worried about to begin with. And we crank this over and it just sounds like absolute butter for that male vocal. Now, how well this responds to compression with the 522 remains to be seen. Like, let's crank it on here. And that's going to keep the levels under control. Like this is me talking fairly quietly. And this is me yelling into the mic. And we get a bit of a spike there. But if I take that threshold back a little bit and yell a little bit more, it really seems to clamp down, which is pretty cool, actually. That's pretty impressive. This thing is pretty grabby. I will give it that. But we're going to go with an auto release and see how that goes. And let's see if we throw in the high pass filter. That just seems to maybe make the voice sound a bit thicker, which is really cool on a male vocal. Where are we at here? We're only at about a 5-to-1 ratio, which is about what I'd normally do on the distressor for my normal YouTube videos. I'm going 6-to-1. But if I go hard knee compression, it's a little more aggressive. I might not be able to hear it in the monitors as much, but I can definitely hear some sibilance going on in the headphones. And if I pull that back, it's a little bit softer. So that's pretty cool. Not sure about the presence knob, how much of that I'd really want to turn up. I mean, like it gets a little aggressive here. But if we pull it back just a little bit and just add in a slight amount, it's not bad at all. And of course, finally, the return level on this seems to really do the trick. Let's make sure we're not hitting that output transformer too hard. And will this get really aggressive? So far, we're not spiking the signal out on the digital end of anything, but you can see the waveform is getting squared off a little bit right in the bottom end there. Like if we yell for a little bit for a couple seconds, it definitely gets aggressive, which isn't bad. I don't know if I'd want to use this if I was recording a pop idol like Miley Cyrus or Britney Spears or something like that, but this might be really cool on death metal vocals. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Okay, that did crop out on the digital end, but I don't know. That was kind of cool. Let's pull that back a little bit one more time. Yeah, that adds quite a bit of distortion. I don't know. That might be kind of fun. All right, so my bottom line here, it's not bad. At $250, it's one of the cheaper 500 series compressors you can find. It's not the cheapest. Alcatron's got one for $150. I'm going to be checking out in a couple weeks. I know DBX has some going for right around $200. So there's definitely some other ones out there that will compete with this. That being said, I love this thing on bass guitar. It's probably going to be my favorite bass compressor for some time to come. And it's pretty good on snare. It's got a bit of the spank on it like you would hear on an SSL channel compressor, but it's definitely not a replacement for one of those. If you want that SSL sound, go spend the money on the real thing. This isn't some kind of cheap replacement. Don't even go there. It isn't bad on snare though. I love the added functionality of the high pass filter and the auto release and the knee switch. All that works really well. The thing that kind of irks me though is if you want a pair, you're going to be looking at $500, and that is definitely not the bargain territory anymore. The ultimate bargain stereo compressor of all time is the Art Pro VLA tube compressor at about $300. It's just simply unbeatable. If you have two channels you want compression for, definitely get the Art Pro VLA. If you've got a couple of free slots in your 500 series rack, okay, yeah, grab a Midas or two. It'll do the job. But if you're looking for the ultimate bargain, get the Art. Fearless Gear Reviews is my patron-funded review show where I can give you guys the straight story without any corporate fuckery whatsoever. So I want to give a great big salute to everybody for their support on this and making this video possible. There's absolutely next to nothing available online for information on this, but I thought this might be a cool bargain compressor to check out. And overall, I'd say I'd give it a 6 out of 10. It's not spectacular, but it's not half bad either. I've definitely heard a lot worse. Go check it out yourself. I'll have some links in the description below. And if you want to see more Fearless Gear Reviews, head on over to my Patreon and get involved, because this is where you get the real story. Thanks so much for all your support. And if you guys want to see the follow-up video where I shoot out 4 different bargain compressors, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get notified about that. Because if you want to get the straight story on a cheap compressor that's going to get you the best bang for the buck, this is a video you're not going to want to miss. Anyway, until next time, wash your fucking hands!